"I'm not caring for that old witch," my daughter-in-law whispered at my son's funeral. She thought no one could hear her over the soft music and quiet conversations drifting through the chapel. She was wrong. At first, I wondered if grief had distorted my hearing. After all, I was standing only a few feet away from the casket of my only son. The room felt unreal, as though I were trapped inside someone else's nightmare. My name is Margaret Collins. I was 72 years old that autumn morning, and I had already buried my husband 8 years earlier. Now I was saying goodbye to my son, Ryan. Nothing prepares a mother for that. Nothing. The chapel was filled with white lilies and framed photographs from Ryan's life. In one picture, he was 6 years old, smiling proudly beside a bicycle I had saved months to buy. In another, he stood in a graduation gown, his arm around my shoulders. Everywhere I looked, I saw pieces of the boy I had raised. Everywhere except in the face of the woman standing near the front row. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. She wore black, her blonde hair perfectly arranged, her expression carefully practiced. To everyone else, she looked like a grieving widow. She accepted hugs. She dabbed at her eyes. She thanked guests for coming. But then I heard her. Those 7 words slipped from her mouth like ice water. "I'm not caring for that old witch." The sentence was followed by a small laugh. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to reveal what she truly thought of me. I felt my fingers tighten around the funeral program. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, not because of the insult. Compared to losing Ryan, the insult was small. What stunned me was the timing. My son's casket sat 20 feet away. The flowers around him had not yet begun to fade. The service wasn't even over. And already she was talking about what came next. About me. About being rid of me. I slowly turned my head. Vanessa was speaking to a woman I didn't recognize. They stood near the side aisle, believing themselves hidden by the crowd. Vanessa's smile disappeared when she noticed several people glancing in her direction. The stranger beside her looked uncomfortable. Vanessa immediately lowered her eyes and resumed her performance of sorrow. But the damage had been done. Someone had heard her. More than one person, judging by the expressions around the room. I didn't confront her. I didn't make a scene. Ryan deserved better than that. Instead, I looked toward the front of the chapel, where his photograph rested beside a candle. The image captured him at 45, healthy and happy, before the illness that had taken him from us far too soon. My chest ached. For months I had sat beside his hospital bed. For months I had prayed for one more birthday, one more Christmas, one more ordinary afternoon drinking coffee together. Now all I had left were memories and photographs. The minister began speaking again, his voice calm and steady. Guests returned to their seats. The service moved forward. Yet something had shifted inside me. The grief remained, heavy and overwhelming, but beneath it was a quiet unease. Vanessa's words lingered in my mind. They felt less like an insult and more like a glimpse behind a curtain. A glimpse of plans already being made. Plans that did not include me. When the service finally ended, people formed a line to offer condolences. Some embraced me. Others shared stories about Ryan. I thanked them all. Then, as I prepared to leave the chapel, I noticed my granddaughter Emily standing near the doorway. She was 19 years old, Ryan's daughter, and her face looked unusually pale. Her eyes met mine across the room. There was fear in them. Fear and something else. Determination. Emily walked toward me, hesitated, and then stopped. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice trembling, "there's something Dad wanted you to know." Before I could ask what she meant, Vanessa appeared at her side. Emily instantly fell silent. Vanessa forced a smile and placed a hand on her shoulder. But as they stood there together, I saw Emily glance back at me. It lasted only a second. Yet in that brief moment, I understood one thing with absolute certainty. My son's funeral was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. That evening, after the last guests had gone home and the flowers from the funeral had been gathered into boxes, I sat alone in my living room staring at a photograph of Ryan that had been taken 3 summers earlier. He was standing on the dock of a small lake in northern Minnesota, smiling into the sunlight with a fishing rod in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. It was one of my favorite pictures because nothing about it was staged. It captured him exactly as he had been. Relaxed.
Kind.
Present. The silence inside my house felt heavier than it ever had before. During the months of Ryan's illness, there had always been phone calls, doctor appointments, messages from relatives, and endless updates. There had always been something demanding attention. Now, there was only quiet. I found myself listening for sounds that would never come again.
A familiar ringtone.
A knock at the door. His voice saying, "Hi, Mom." I wiped my eyes and looked at the clock. It was nearly 9 o'clock. Outside, a cold wind rattled the branches against the windows. Inside, every room felt larger than it should have. My thoughts kept returning to Emily. The look on her face at the funeral would not leave me alone.
Fear. Concern.
Urgency.
She had wanted to tell me something.
I was certain of it. Then Vanessa had appeared, and the moment had vanished. I was still thinking about that when my phone vibrated on the coffee table. The screen lit up with a text message. For a moment my heart jumped, forgetting reality. Then I saw the sender's name. Emily. My fingers trembled as I opened the message. "Grandma, are you awake?" I replied immediately.
Yes.
A few seconds passed. Then another message appeared. "Can I come over? There is something important I need to show you." 20 minutes later, headlights swept across my front window. I opened the door before she even reached the porch. Emily stepped inside wearing a gray sweatshirt and jeans. Her eyes were red, as though she had been crying. She hugged me tightly. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I led her into the kitchen and made us both tea. It was something I had always done when life became difficult. The familiar routine helped steady my nerves. Emily wrapped both hands around her mug, but did not drink. She kept glancing. Toward the window. Toward the door.
Toward her phone.
"Grandma," she said quietly, "I do not know how to tell you this. I waited. Dad sent me an email 3 weeks ago." My heart skipped a beat. "An email?" She nodded. "He told me not to open it unless something happened to him." The kitchen suddenly felt very still. I could hear the ticking of the clock above the refrigerator. Nothing else. Emily unlocked her phone and searched through her messages. Then she placed the screen in front of me. The email was short. Much shorter than I expected. The subject lines simply read, "If needed." I looked down and read the words carefully. "Emily, if you are reading this, then things did not go the way I hoped. Please do not panic. Most importantly, trust Grandma. And if she ever seems confused about what is happening, tell her to trust you. There are things she does not know yet. I will explain when the time comes. Love, Dad." I read the message twice. Then a third time. "What does he mean?" I whispered. Emily shook her head. "I do not know, but that is not the only reason I came." She swallowed hard. "Grandma, after the funeral, I overheard Vanessa making a phone call. A cold feeling settled in my stomach." Emily lowered her voice. She was talking about selling the house. She said she wanted everything handled quickly. And she said there was one obstacle left to deal with. Emily looked directly into my eyes. "Grandma, I think she was talking about you." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and unsettling. I stared down into my tea, watching the surface tremble slightly beneath my hands. Part of me wanted to dismiss what Emily had heard. Grief could make people suspicious. Loss could turn ordinary conversations into something darker. But another part of me remembered the look on Vanessa's face at the funeral. I remembered the coldness behind her carefully rehearsed tears. Most of all, I remembered Ryan's email. "There are things she does not know yet." The sentence echoed in my mind. What exactly did Vanessa say? I asked quietly. Emily took a breath. I was in the hallway outside the family room. She did not know I was there. She was talking to someone about paperwork and timelines. Then she said she wanted the house listed as soon as possible. Emily paused. "The person on the phone asked about you." I felt my stomach tighten. And Emily looked down. Vanessa said, "I will handle Margaret. She is the last obstacle." The kitchen seemed colder suddenly. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows, making the glass rattle softly. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around my shoulders. Obstacle. Not mother-in-law. Not family. Not Ryan's mother. An obstacle. The word hurt more than I expected. I had spent 15 years trying to welcome Vanessa into our family. I remembered the first Thanksgiving after she and Ryan married. She had been nervous about hosting dinner. I arrived 3 hours early to help. Together we peeled potatoes, prepared pies, and decorated the dining room table. At the end of the evening, she hugged me and thanked me for treating her like a daughter. At least that was what I thought she had meant. Looking back now, I wondered how much of it had been genuine. Emily reached across the table and touched my hand. "Grandma, there is something else." I looked up. Dad started acting differently about 2 months before he got sick. Not in a bad way. More like he was worried about something. My heart skipped. "Did he tell you what it was?" She shook her head.
No.
But he started organizing things. Documents. Files. Old records. He spent hours in the garage. A memory surfaced immediately. One Saturday afternoon, I had stopped by unexpectedly. Ryan had been carrying several storage boxes toward the garage. When I asked what he was doing, he laughed and said he was finally getting organized. At the time, it seemed completely ordinary. Now I was not so sure. Did he ever mention where he put those files? I asked. Emily hesitated. Actually, yes. About a month ago, he told me that if I ever needed answers, I should start with the blue storage box. My pulse quickened. Blue storage box. She nodded. He said I would know it when I saw it. Neither of us spoke for a moment. The clock continued ticking above the refrigerator. Somewhere in the distance, a car passed on the
road.
Ordinary sounds.
Ordinary moments.
Yet everything felt different now. It felt as though Ryan had left behind a trail of clues without fully explaining why. "Grandma," Emily said softly, I do not think Dad expected to leave us this soon. But I think he was trying to protect something." I looked toward the dark kitchen window where my reflection stared back at me. Tired eyes. Gray hair. A woman who had spent the last week believing her life was falling apart. For the first time since the funeral, a different feeling began to emerge beneath the grief. Not anger. Not revenge. Determination. Ryan had trusted Emily. Ryan had left a message. And somewhere, hidden among the things he left behind, there was a truth neither of us understood yet. I slowly stood from the table and reached for my coat, hanging beside the back door. Emily looked at me in surprise. "Where are we going?" she asked. I glanced toward the night beyond the window. "To your father's house," I said. "I think it is time we find that blue box." The drive across town felt longer than usual. Emily sat beside me in silence, watching the dark streets pass beyond the windshield. Most businesses had already closed for the night. Storefronts stood empty beneath pools of yellow light, and the sidewalks were nearly deserted. Every few minutes, I caught myself glancing at the passenger seat where Ryan used to sit whenever we drove somewhere together. The habit was so automatic that it hurt. 25 minutes later, we turned into the familiar subdivision where Ryan and Vanessa had lived for more than a decade. The house stood at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. Its porch light was off. Only a faint glow from an upstairs window suggested anyone was home. I parked across the street and turned off the engine. For a moment, neither Emily nor I moved. We simply stared at the house. It looked exactly the same as it always had. The same maple tree in the front yard. The same white fence Ryan painted himself 3 summers ago. The same flower beds I had helped plant every spring. Yet now it felt different, like a place holding secrets. "Vanessa left about an hour ago," Emily said quietly. "She told Aunt Karen she was meeting someone about funeral paperwork." I nodded slowly. "Then we should not have much time." Emily reached into her backpack and removed a spare key. "Dad gave this to me when I got my driver's license. He said every family member should have a way inside during emergencies." My throat tightened. That sounded exactly like Ryan. Always thinking ahead. Always taking care of others. We crossed the street and entered through the side door leading into the kitchen. The moment I stepped inside, memories rushed toward me. birthday dinners, Christmas mornings, summer cookouts. Ryan laughing as he flipped burgers on the patio. Emily doing homework at the kitchen island. For years this house had been full of life. Tonight it felt strangely empty. The refrigerator hummed softly. A clock ticked above the stove. Otherwise, there was silence. Emily led me through the family room toward the garage entrance. Dad spent most of his time out here near the end, she whispered. We opened the door and switched on the light. Rows of shelves lined the walls. Storage bins sat stacked neatly in corners. Gardening tools hung in perfect order. Ryan had always been organized, but this looked different. Deliberate. Almost as though someone had prepared an archive rather than a garage. We began searching carefully. Gray boxes, black boxes, clear plastic containers, Christmas decorations, old camping equipment, tax records. Nothing blue. 20 minutes passed, then 30. I started to wonder if the box had been moved, or worse, removed entirely. Emily was kneeling beside a workbench when she suddenly froze.
Grandma.
I turned. She pointed toward the far corner behind a row of folded lawn chairs. Hidden from immediate view sat a medium-sized blue storage container. My pulse quickened. Together we carried it to the workbench. Dust covered the lid. A strip of masking tape stretched across the top. Written in Ryan's handwriting were 4 simple words. For Emily and Mom. I stared at the label for several seconds. My eyes filled with tears. Even now, even after he was gone, Ryan was still reaching out to us. Emily carefully lifted the lid. Inside were folders, envelopes, and several notebooks arranged with remarkable precision. Resting on top of everything else was a sealed, white envelope. Across the front, in Ryan's unmistakable handwriting, was a message that immediately sent a chill through me. If you found this, things happened sooner than I expected. My hands trembled as I reached for the envelope. For a moment, I could not bring myself to open it. The sight of Ryan's handwriting alone felt overwhelming. It was as though a part of him was still in the room with us. Emily stood beside me, equally silent. Finally, I slid a finger beneath the seal and unfolded the letter inside. The paper contained only a single page, but every line felt important. Mom and Emily, if you are reading this, then I am no longer here to explain things myself. First, I need you both to know that I love you. Second, if certain events begin happening quickly after my passing, do not make any major decisions until you review everything inside this box. There are conversations, documents, and records that may answer questions you do not yet know to ask. Trust each other.
Trust the facts.
Do not let anyone pressure you. Love, Ryan. I read the letter twice. Then I handed it to Emily, who carefully read every word herself. Neither of us spoke immediately. The garage suddenly felt smaller. The air felt heavier. Ryan had clearly anticipated something. He had not written about money or property. He had written about pressure, about decisions, about facts. It sounded less like a farewell letter and more like a warning. Emily set the page down carefully. Dad knew something, she whispered. I nodded. The question is what? We turned our attention to the contents of the box. Inside were several color-coded folders arranged by date. Ryan had always been meticulous, but this level of organization surprised even me. The first folder contained insurance information. The second held tax records. The third contained maintenance receipts for the house. Everything appeared completely ordinary. For nearly 30 minutes we reviewed paperwork without finding anything unusual. Then Emily opened a notebook near the bottom of the box. Grandma, she said quietly, look at this.
I
Moved beside her. The notebook contained handwritten entries dating back almost a year. Ryan had apparently begun keeping personal notes about important conversations and financial decisions. Most entries were brief. Meeting with accountant. Insurance review completed. Property assessment scheduled. Then one sentence caught my eye. Vanessa wants to list the house if anything happens to me. I am not comfortable with the timeline. My heart sank. Emily flipped several pages forward. Another entry appeared. We disagreed again today. She says Mom should eventually move into assisted living.
do not agree.
The garage fell silent. Emily slowly looked up at me. Neither of us needed to say what we were thinking. Ryan had documented concerns months before his illness became serious. More pages revealed similar entries. Nothing dramatic. Nothing angry. Just observations. Careful notes. Concerns written in his calm, measured style. The deeper we looked, the clearer a pattern became. Ryan had been trying to protect everyone from conflict while quietly recording facts. Then Emily opened the final notebook. Tucked between 2 pages was a folded business card. On the back, Ryan had written a short message in blue ink. If questions remain, speak with Daniel Mercer. He has copies. Emily frowned. Who is Daniel Mercer? The name sounded vaguely familiar. Then I remembered. Daniel had been Ryan's attorney for several years. He had handled estate planning and several business matters. I stared at the card for several seconds. Copies. Ryan believed someone else possessed copies of important records. Before I could respond, headlights suddenly swept across the garage door. Both Emily and I froze. A car engine shut off in the driveway. Someone had just arrived home much earlier than expected. Emily reacted first. She quickly closed the notebook and slid it back into the blue storage box. I gathered the loose papers and returned them to their folders. Within seconds, the workbench looked almost exactly as it had before. The only sound in the garage was the faint hum of the overhead light and the steady pounding of my heart. A car door slammed outside. Then another. Footsteps crossed the driveway. Vanessa, Emily whispered. I nodded. We exchanged a glance and carried the blue box toward the back corner where we had found it. The moment we pushed it behind the folded lawn chairs, the door leading into the house opened. Light spilled into the garage. Vanessa stepped inside holding her purse and car keys. For a brief second, surprise flashed across her face. Then it disappeared behind a polite smile. Margaret, she said, I did not realize you were here. Her voice sounded warm enough, but something in her eyes remained cold. Emily wanted to pick up a few things, I replied calmly. Vanessa looked between us. At 10 o'clock at night? Emily folded her arms. I forgot some personal items. Vanessa's smile tightened slightly. Of course. An uncomfortable silence followed. I noticed her gaze moving around the garage. Not casually, deliberately, as though checking whether anything had been disturbed. The realization sent a chill through me. She was looking for something. Eventually she sighed and adjusted the strap of her purse. Well, I am exhausted. It has been a difficult week. I nodded politely. No one mentioned the funeral. No one mentioned Ryan. The absence felt almost louder than conversation. After a few more awkward moments, Vanessa returned to the house. The door closed behind her. Emily waited several seconds before speaking. She knows something. I think so too, I said quietly. We agreed it was too risky to continue searching that night. Carefully, we removed the most important items from the blue box. Ryan's letter, the notebooks, Daniel Mercer's business card, a few folders that seemed especially significant. Everything fit inside Emily's backpack. The rest remained hidden in the garage. 20 minutes later we were back in my kitchen. Neither of us felt tired anymore. Adrenaline had replaced exhaustion. I placed Daniel Mercer's card on the table and stared at it. Ryan had specifically written that Daniel had copies. That meant whatever information Ryan wanted preserved existed somewhere beyond the house. Somewhere Vanessa could not easily reach. The thought brought me a small measure of comfort. Emily pulled out her phone. Do you think we should call him? She asked. I checked the clock. It was nearly 11. Tomorrow morning, I said. If Ryan trusted him, we should do this properly. Emily nodded. Before leaving, she carefully photographed several notebook pages. We wanted digital copies in case anything happened to the originals. Once she finished, she hugged me tightly. Grandma, be careful. The seriousness in her voice caught me off guard. Why would you say that? I asked. Emily hesitated. Because Dad was worried. And because Vanessa seems worried too. People only get nervous when they are afraid something might come out. After she left, I locked the front door and sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was quiet again. But this silence felt different from the one that followed the funeral. Earlier in the week, grief had left me feeling lost. Now grief shared space with questions. Questions Ryan clearly wanted answered. I looked down at Daniel Mercer's business card one last time before heading to bed. Beneath the attorney's name was an office address on the other side of town. A simple detail, yet somehow it felt like the next step in a path Ryan had prepared long before any of us realized it. As I turned off the kitchen light, one thought stayed with me. My son had not left clues by accident. He had expected someone to follow them. And the deeper we looked, the more convinced I became that the truth waiting ahead would change everything. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. For a few seconds, I forgot everything. Then reality returned. Ryan was gone. Vanessa was hiding something. And somewhere in the middle of all that uncertainty was a trail my son had deliberately left behind. By 8 o'clock, I was dressed and sitting across from Emily in the waiting area of Daniel Mercer's law office. The building was located in a quiet part of town, surrounded by brick storefronts and small businesses that had served the community for decades. A receptionist offered us coffee while we waited. Neither of us touched it. 10 minutes later, a tall man with silver hair appeared in the doorway. I recognized him immediately. Daniel looked older than the last time I had seen him, but his expression remained steady and professional. "Margaret," he said warmly. "Emily, please come in." His office was lined with shelves filled with legal books and framed family photographs. After we sat down, he studied our faces carefully. "I had a feeling I might see you sooner than expected," he said quietly. My pulse quickened. "You knew Ryan left information behind?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." Emily leaned forward. "Then you know what is happening?" Daniel folded his hands together. "Not entirely, but I know Ryan was concerned about several matters during the last year." He opened a locked drawer and removed a thick file folder. Seeing it immediately reminded me of the blue storage box. Organized. Deliberate.
Planned.
Daniel placed the folder on his desk, but did not open it yet. "Before we continue," he said, "there is something important you should understand. Ryan was not preparing for conflict. He was preparing for clarity." The sentence caught my attention. It sounded exactly like something my son would say. Daniel finally opened the folder. Inside were copies of documents, letters, and several pages of notes. Over the past year, Ryan met with me multiple times. He reviewed his estate plan, updated several records, documented certain concerns. He wanted everything transparent and fair. Emily and I exchanged a glance. Daniel removed one page and slid it toward us. It was dated 8 months earlier. At the bottom was Ryan's signature. I read carefully. The document described his wishes regarding family assets, property decisions, and long-term care arrangements for immediate family members. Then one sentence made me stop. Under no circumstances should my mother be pressured to leave her home or surrender independent decision-making authority. I looked up slowly. Daniel nodded. Ryan was very specific about that point. Emily sat back in her chair. Why would he write something like that? Daniel hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. Because he believed discussions were already taking place. Silence filled the office. Outside the window, people walked past carrying coffee cups and briefcases. Inside, the room felt frozen in
Time.
Daniel reached for another document. There is more. He handed me a printed email chain. As I scanned the pages, my stomach tightened. Several messages discussed real estate evaluations. Others referenced possible timelines for selling the family home. What shocked me was the date. Some of the conversations had started nearly 6 months before Ryan passed away. 6 months. Long before anyone expected the future to unfold this way. Emily stared at the pages in disbelief. Dad knew about this? Daniel nodded slowly.
He did.
I closed the file and looked out the office window. My grief had not disappeared. It never would. But another realization was beginning to take shape. Ryan had spent months quietly protecting the people he loved. He had seen concerns forming long before anyone else recognized them. And now, piece by piece, those concerns were finally coming into view. Then Daniel reached into the folder one final time and removed a sealed envelope. Across the front, in Ryan's handwriting, were 4 words that instantly made my heart race. Open only if necessary. For several moments, none of us moved. The envelope rested on Daniel's desk like something fragile and important. I could not stop staring at Ryan's handwriting. Open only if necessary. The words carried weight because Ryan was not dramatic by nature. He never exaggerated. If he left instructions like this, he had a reason. Daniel looked at me carefully. The decision is yours, Margaret. I swallowed and nodded. It is necessary. Daniel handed me the envelope. My fingers felt strangely numb as I broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter several pages long. The moment I recognized Ryan's writing, my chest tightened. Dear Mom, if this letter is being opened, then events have unfolded in a way that concerns me. Please do not be frightened by anything you read. I am writing this because I want facts to survive emotions. I paused. That sentence alone sounded exactly like him. Ryan always believed facts mattered more than assumptions, more than rumors, more than fear. I continued reading. Over the past year, I have become aware of conversations regarding future decisions about family, property, financial planning, and living arrangements. Some of these discussions happened without my participation. Others happened in my presence. While I do not believe anyone intends direct harm, I do believe certain decisions may be made too quickly after my passing. Therefore, I have documented everything and provided copies to Daniel Mercer. Emily sat perfectly still. Daniel remained silent. I turned the page. If you are reading this, I ask for one thing above all else. Do not allow pressure, guilt, or urgency to influence major decisions. Take your time. Verify everything. Trust people who bring evidence, not people who demand immediate action. My eyes filled with tears. Even now, Ryan was trying to protect us. Not through anger, not through accusations, through patience and clarity. Then I reached the final section of the letter, the part that changed everything. Several months ago, I learned that preliminary inquiries had been made regarding the sale of the house. These inquiries occurred without my authorization. While no illegal action took place, the timing troubled me. I have preserved documentation showing when those discussions began. Copies are included with Daniel Mercer. I slowly lowered the page. The room felt completely silent. 6 months. The conversations had started 6 months earlier, long before anyone expected Ryan to be gone, long before funeral arrangements, long before the whispers I heard in the chapel. Daniel opened another section of the file. Inside were printed emails, property assessments, and communication records. Every document was dated. Every timeline was clear.
No speculation. No guesswork.
Just facts. Emily stared at the pages. Dad really documented everything. Daniel nodded. That was his intention. I looked down again at Ryan's letter. One final paragraph remained. If circumstances require it, I encourage Mom and Emily to gather the family together and share the truth openly. Not to embarrass anyone. Not to punish anyone. Simply to ensure that decisions moving forward are based on honesty. Family cannot heal without truth. The words stayed with me long after I finished reading. Family cannot heal without truth. Daniel carefully returned the documents to the folder. Your son was remarkable, he said quietly. I smiled sadly.
Yes.
He was. As Emily and I prepared to leave the office, Daniel handed me a copy of the letter along with several supporting documents. Outside, the afternoon sun stretched across the sidewalk. People moved through their ordinary lives, unaware that mine had changed again. We had answers now. Not all of them, but enough to see the larger picture. Ryan had anticipated conflict. He had prepared evidence. And most importantly, he had left instructions. As Emily and I walked toward my car, she looked at me. What happens now? I opened the passenger door and thought about Ryan's final request. Gather the family together and share the truth openly. For the first time since the funeral, I knew exactly what needed to happen next. We're going to honor your father's wishes, I said quietly. And very soon, everyone is going to hear the truth. 3 days later, family members began arriving at my house one by one. I had invited them under the simple pretense of sharing some of Ryan's final letters and memories. No one questioned it. In fact, several relatives thanked me for organizing something meaningful after such a difficult week. By early afternoon, the living room was full. Ryan's cousin sat near the fireplace. His Aunt Karen occupied the armchair by the window. Emily stayed close beside me. Vanessa arrived last. She walked through the front door dressed elegantly, carrying the same practiced expression of sadness she had worn since the funeral. "Margaret," she said softly, offering a brief hug. "This was a lovely idea." I smiled politely. "Thank you for coming." For the first half hour, everything appeared completely normal. People shared stories about Ryan. They laughed through tears while remembering fishing trips, birthday celebrations, and family vacations. More than once, I found myself smiling at memories I had nearly forgotten. It felt good hearing his name spoken with love. Then I stood and quietly cleared my throat. The room gradually fell silent. Every face turned toward me. "Thank you all for being here," I began. Ryan left behind more than memories. He also left instructions. Vanessa shifted slightly in her chair. I noticed it immediately. I continued. "Over the past week, Emily and I discovered several letters and documents Ryan prepared before his passing. He wanted certain facts preserved." The room remained silent. I picked up Ryan's letter and began reading selected passages aloud. Not the emotional parts. Not the personal ones. Only the sections discussing patience, transparency, and family decisions. Several relatives exchanged curious glances. Vanessa sat perfectly still. Then I placed copies of several documents on the coffee table. Property assessments, email timelines, records showing conversations about selling the house months before Ryan passed away.
No accusations. No opinions.
Only dates and facts. Aunt Karen frowned as she reviewed the papers. One of Ryan's cousins leaned forward. "These discussions started 6 months ago?" he asked quietly. "According to the records, yes," I replied. The room grew noticeably uncomfortable. Vanessa finally spoke. "I do not understand why this is relevant." Her voice remained calm, but the confidence I had seen before was beginning to crack. Before I could answer, Emily stood. My granddaughter rarely enjoyed speaking in front of groups. Yet now her voice was steady. Because Grandpa wanted the truth available to everyone. She looked directly at Vanessa. And because there is more. Emily removed her phone from her pocket. My heart tightened. I knew exactly what she was about to do. At the funeral, several people had overheard the cruel remark Vanessa thought no one would hear. Unbeknownst to her, one guest had also recorded part of the conversation while sending a voice message nearby. The audio was brief. Very brief. But it was clear. Emily pressed play. The room filled with silence first. Then Vanessa's unmistakable voice. The words lasted only seconds. Yet they changed everything. No one interrupted. No one spoke. When the recording ended, the silence felt enormous. Vanessa's face lost color. She looked around the room searching for support. She found none. Not because people were angry. Because they were disappointed.
Deeply.
Disappointed. I looked at her calmly. "Ryan wanted honesty," I said. "That is all this is." For a long moment, she stared at the floor. Then she quietly gathered her purse and stood. Without another word, she walked toward the door and left. No one stopped her. No one chased after her. The front door closed softly behind her. And that was the moment I finally understood something important. Justice does not always arrive through punishment. Sometimes it arrives through truth. In the weeks that followed, decisions were made carefully, exactly as Ryan requested. No one pressured me. No one rushed me. Emily and I remained close. The house remained in the family. Most importantly, Ryan's voice continued guiding us through the wisdom he left behind. Even now, when I think about that difficult season, I remember the final lesson my son gave us. Facts matter. Patience matters. Truth matters. And eventually, no matter how carefully it is hidden, the truth finds a way to be heard.